All right. So, sometimes you stumble upon these stories and they just, they grab you. And this one we're diving into today is definitely one of those.
Yeah.
You've got a yoga guru who builds this huge consumer goods empire.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild.
It's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, so we're looking at this YouTube podcast script today to kind of break it all down, the whole Patanjali story.
Right.
And really just figure out how Baba Ramdev, I mean, this guy who's so deeply connected to spirituality and all that,
Yeah.
how did he end up creating this dominant force in India's, that crazy FMCG market?
Right.
It's like a total David and Goliath thing.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. I think what's so fascinating about it is that you start with someone who's, their impact initially is all about philosophy and well-being,
Right.
that kind of thing. And then somehow all that influence spills over into the world of like toothpaste and soap.
Exactly. It's like,
It makes you think, what is it about that time or that place or that society that allowed for that to happen?
yeah, exactly.
Really interesting.
So let's kind of like set the stage here.
Okay.
We've got this guy, Ramkrishna Yadav, born in a village in Haryana
Mm-hmm.
back in 1965.
Mm.
And from the beginning, it sounds like he was drawn to like the spiritual side of things.
Right.
Into yoga and all that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, he ends up becoming a monk, right?
Yeah.
Which you think of as like renouncing the material world and all that.
Totally. Yeah.
But then comes the 2000s,
Yeah.
and TV, of all things, becomes his platform.
Interesting.
That's where millions of people first encountered Baba Ramdev.
Right. And I think what really resonated, what made him connect with so many people was that he had this knack for making yoga feel accessible. Like it wasn't this super esoteric, intimidating thing. It was like down to earth, his teaching style.
Yeah.
Plus, he's got this really charismatic personality. So you put those two things together, and it's no wonder people responded.
And you have to think about the timing, too.
Oh.
Right. It's the early 2000s. People are starting to get more into, like, wellness, natural remedies.
Totally.
And here comes this guy who's, like, speaking directly to that in a way that people could relate to.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about the poses, right?
Right.
He was advocating for Ayurveda as this whole system of health.
Yeah, yeah.
A way of life, almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he builds this massive following, this, like, huge amount of trust with people.
Right.
But it seems like his vision went beyond just individual well-being,
It did, yeah.
Like he had this bigger ambition.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to take Ayurveda, Indian-made products, and like put them on the map globally.
Right.
And that's what led to Patanjali Ayurveda in 2006, which he founded with Acharya Balkrishna.
I think even the name itself is really telling, Patanjali, right? The ancient sage, the father of yoga.
Right.
Like right away, that gives the brand this feeling of heritage, authenticity, and their mission statement was bold.
What was it?
It was essentially to bring back traditional Indian knowledge,
Wow.
Ayurveda in particular,
Okay.
and to make it a real alternative to all those big multinational FMCG companies.
So they were going head to head with the giants.
Yeah, they were. They weren't just a brand. They were like this revivalist movement,
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So what was it about their products that made them stand out?
Okay, so their big thing, their unique selling point was this idea of natural, chemical-free products.
Okay.
Right. And the thing is, they didn't just have like one or two things.
Right.
They had a massive range.
Right.
We're talking toothpaste, honey, ghee, face creams.
Everything, yeah.
Pretty much everything you could think of.
Wow.
And the prices were really competitive.
Yeah, that was a big part of it, right?
Huge.
Yeah.
So you could get all these natural Ayurvedic products and not break the bank,
Yeah.
especially in rural and semi-urban areas where people are really price conscious.
Right.
That was a game changer.
So that explains the huge growth, those revenue numbers by 2016, right?
Exactly.
10,000 cores.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So what were the main things that made Patanjali so successful so quickly? The podcast script we're looking at points to a few key factors.
Okay.
First off, there's Baba Ramdev himself.
Yeah.
This guy had built so much trust, so much influence. It was like his personal brand became this automatic endorsement for the products.
Yeah, it's amazing.
How did he manage to cultivate that so effectively, especially in those early days?
I think it goes back to those TV appearances.
Okay.
There was this genuineness about him, He wasn't being overtly commercial.
Right.
He wasn't directly selling anything.
Right.
He was just sharing yoga, promoting a healthy lifestyle.
Right, right.
So people saw him as someone who actually cared about their well-being,
Okay.
not just about making money.
Makes sense.
And that trust naturally carried over to the products.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting example of how a person's credibility can translate into a brand's success.
And then you have this whole Swadeshi thing,
Yeah.
this sense of national pride,
Mm-hmm.
a preference for things made in India.
Absolutely.
And Patanjali really tapped into that,
Yeah.
right?
They did. They positioned themselves as this authentically Indian brand
Mm.
championing Indian traditions.
Yeah, yeah.
And it worked.
Why do you think that resonated so strongly at that particular time in India?
Well, I think there are a few things at play.
Okay.
Historically, there have been a lot of movements in India that emphasize self-reliance
Mhm.
and promoting local goods,
Right.
And then you have globalization happening in the early 2000s, which maybe created this kind of counter movement
Okay.
where people wanted to reconnect with Indian-made products
Makes sense.
to preserve their identity, support their own economy.
Yeah.
And Patanjali was right there offering people a way to express their national pride through their purchases.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about the pricing.
Yep.
They were undercutting those multinational companies often by a lot.
Right.
And they were still using natural ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
How did they manage that logistically? Like, how could they be so competitive on price?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they have their secrets,
Right.
but there are probably a few factors.
Yeah.
They might have had really efficient supply chains,
Okay.
Leveraging local sources for those Ayurvedic ingredients.
Right.
And their scale, the sheer volume of products they were making,
Yeah.
that would give them a lot of bargaining power.
Makes sense.
And their marketing and distribution.
Yeah.
They might have been more cost-effective compared to those huge companies with their massive ad budgets.
Right. Right.
So it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
Clever operations, smart positioning in the market.
Okay, so we've got the influence of Baba Ramdev, the Swadeshi appeal, the affordability,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the core of it all,
Mm-hmm.
the natural Ayurvedic ingredients. In a market that was full of products, perceived as being like loaded with chemicals,
Right.
they offered this return to tradition, these time-tested formulations,
It was a powerful message.
and it resonated with people,
Yeah.
especially as they became more health conscious.
Absolutely. Ayurveda has this long, respected history in India. People believe in it.
Yeah.
So when Patanjali came along with these products rooted in Ayurveda,
Right.
it gave people a sense of reassurance.
Yeah.
It felt like a healthier alternative.
Yeah, in a world that was increasingly skeptical of all those chemicals and everything.
Exactly.
But of course there were challenges, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
No story like this is without its bumps in the road. They faced scrutiny, controversies. There were questions about whether the products were really what they claimed to be,
Right.
and regulatory bodies like the FSSAI.
Yeah. They flagged issues with labeling, compliance.
What do you think that tells us about the challenges of growing a business like this, with that focus on natural products, while also having to deal with all those regulations?
I think it shows how hard it is to maintain consistent quality,
Okay.
especially when you're working with natural ingredients. They can vary,
Yeah.
So scaling up production to meet that huge demand while sticking to that natural ethos,
Yeah.
that's a tough balancing act.
Yeah, it's like walking a tightrope.
And then the regulatory scrutiny,
Yeah.
that's bound to happen when you become a major player.
It comes with the territory.
Exactly.
So it really highlights the need for good quality control
Mm-hmm.
and transparent labeling,
Absolutely.
especially as a company gets bigger.
For sure.
And then you've got the controversies around Baba Ramdev himself,
Yeah.
his political statements, his views on modern medicine.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah. How do you think those personal controversies affected the brand?
I think it's complicated.
Yeah.
On one hand, his strong opinion.
Probably resonated with some people.
Right.
They might have felt even more loyal to the brand because it reflected his values.
Okay.
But on the other hand, those same opinions probably alienated other people who didn't agree with them.
Yeah.
So it's this double-edged sword
Yeah.
when the founder is so closely tied to the brand.
It can be both a blessing and a curse.
Exactly.
But regardless of those controversies, Patanjali really shook things up in the Indian FMCG market.
Oh, yeah.
The podcast script even talks about how they forced those big companies,
Yeah.
like Hindustan Unilever, Colgate, to start making their own Ayurvedic lines.
Right?
That's a pretty big deal.
It's huge.
What does that tell us about Patanjali's impact?
I think it's the clearest sign of disruption.
Okay.
When those established giants start changing their strategies, launching new products just to compete with this newcomer,
Yeah.
that means the newcomer did something, right?
They created a whole new game.
Exactly. They didn't just find a niche. They shifted the entire market, and they keep evolving.
Yeah.
It's not just Ayurvedic products anymore. They've got dairy, textiles, packaged foods.
It's ambitious.
What do you think that tells us about their long-term plans?
I think they want to be a major player in India.
Like across the board?
Yeah, not just in the Ayurvedic space.
Okay.
They've got this brand recognition, this huge distribution network.
Right.
So they're moving into all these other areas with a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And they've got Baba Ramdev still out there promoting this whole philosophy.
It's like they're selling a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's more than just products.
Uh-huh.
It's this whole idea of wellness, self-reliance.
It's pretty powerful.
It is.
So the story of Patanjali and Baba Ramdev, it's really about how a clear vision and a ton of hard work,
Yeah.
plus a deep understanding of the culture, the economy,
Absolutely.
all of that can lead to incredible success.
It's inspiring.
Even when it seems like you're up against impossible odds.
Yeah, for sure.
But as we've talked about, there are always challenges.
Right.
Scrutiny, controversy.
It's part of the journey.
So what do you think? What does Patanjali's success tell you about the relationship between spirituality, business, and national identity in the world today?
I think it's a fascinating case study.
Yeah.
It shows you how powerful cultural resonance can be when you combine that with smart business strategies.
Yeah.
Understanding what people care about, like their national identity, their health.
Right.
That's huge for building a successful brand.
Think about the principles behind their growth. Building trust, offering affordability, tapping into those deep cultural values.
Right.
Do you see those principles at play in any other sectors or industries that you're interested in?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's something to think about.
Definitely.
It's a pretty fascinating story.
For sure.
And it raises some interesting questions.
Yeah.